Hi everybody and welcome to this fly tying tutorial. The pattern that I'm tying today is Mike Mercer's Psycho Prince. This is a really great pattern. It takes on a lot of the original, or I should say some of the original characteristics of the Prince Nymph. I'm using 8/0 black thread today. You can also use 6/0. Before I get into that, I'll tell you a little bit about this pattern, some variations of it, then I'll start tying this. So to start off with, if you've ever heard of this pattern before, seen it, you've probably seen this pattern. You'll notice the brown biot tails, purple body, there's a little carapace or casing, I think that's pheasant tail on this one. We have some DNA fibers shooting out for the wing case, some white goose biots for those legs, and a purple head and thorax at the front. So this is, pretty much Mike Mercer's original Psycho Prince. It's on a little longer hook, and I'll mention that a little bit more about that in a second. Well, the reason I chose this pattern today is because this original fly is a great fly. However, there are so many variations that can be offered to this pattern, and I really think that, I really recommend you to go out there and try some different variations. So for starters, my main variation of it is that I'm tying this on a 2x long Nymph streamer hook. I like that. I like a tungsten bead on it. I like to change the color of the bead, but I really love the fact that this is a 2XL hook. This pattern that I'm going to be tying today is black, and because of that, I like to fish it to represent the Isonychias in Pennsylvania. The hook is an S402BL put out by Allen Fly Fishing. It's a great hook because it's barbless, so I can just slide these beads directly on it. Well, after I have my thread tied on, I'm just going to wrap back. I might go to the bend, and I'm going to place a little bit of the dubbing onto this hook. The reason I place the dubbing is because it's going to help separate my goose biots. So this is almost a tag, or we'll just call it a dubbing separator. So I'm just going to put just a little bit of dubbing on, just make a couple turns, and that's it. Then I grab my black goose biots and just pull out a couple of these. Let me trim them. Okay, now let me lock these in place. So I might just put one going out facing the camera. Just wrap up, lock that one in place. Wrap to that back point. Grab my second one. Line it up with the first, make sure they're approximately the same length. Then lock its fibers in place. Make sure you have some great wraps there to make sure they're secure. Trim their tag ends. Okay, next we can, you have kind of two choices. You can tie in the ribbing or you can tie in the carapace or casing. I'm going to tie in the casing simply because the ribbing is really going to be thick on this pattern. So for this casing that goes over the top, you can really use a ton of materials. You can use turkey, you can use pheasant, you can use guinea. It's truly up to you. I have some pheasant tail I'm going to be tying this in. I like to tie it in by the tips, but I don't want to go the extreme tips. I'm really going to come like a third of the way down and tie it in at that point, simply because I really want to make sure this is showing, and I really want some of the thicker sections of that feather to really be apparent. I might just trim this off. I might actually trim it a little high because I want to lock it down just a tad more to make sure everything is secure on this. Okay, now I'm going to trim back, or I'm sorry, wrap back. And I'm going to stop. Before I get there, I'm going to next tie in my ribbing. So for the original pattern, I'll show it to you again. If you notice, the ribbing is definitely prevalent, but it's just a typical, it's a small wire rib on it. Instead, for the variation, I'm going to be using ultra wire size medium. Now I'm going to use the color chartreuse, and again, that's something you can really vary. I go through a lot of different colors of this. So I just cut out a little piece of chartreuse. I might tie it on. I'm going to lock it in place so it goes up about 4/5 of the way. You can see, pretty much where I stopped it. I don't want to pull it up. I don't want to tie it in too far up, simply because I do want to leave a little bit of room up there whenever I finish off the head of my fly. So I want to make sure that's really secure. Then I'm going to wrap back. I'll be wrapping over my casing, and I'll wrap right to the point where I tied in my biots. And what's nice when you get back there, and if you look under the fly, or this side, I guess, you can start to see that my body's already there. I already have it in place, and I have a really great starting position. Okay, so I'm ready to tie in my body. This is one of the main variations from the original Prince Nymph. For this Psycho Prince, basically, I swear Mike Mercer just grabbed some bright color dubbing that had some Antron or some flash to it and said, let's try out this. And it worked. The original pattern, and I'll zoom out so you can see this, uses more of a color like this. This is a UV purple. It looks almost a little blue in my camera, but that's more of a purple. Some other variations that I've used, I love orange on this pattern. I like pink. Don't be afraid to go just for a nice white as well. But in this case today, I'm going to be using a peacock color, since the original pattern did involve peacock. So I figured we're going to have a little, pay a little homage to that original one. So let me zoom this back in. Okay. Now there, you will use a ton of dubbing on this, so really don't be afraid to just kind of go crazy. So let me start dubbing my thread. I'm going to push it up. I do prefer a slight taper, even though it may be a little tough with all the dubbing that you're going to be using. Okay, I have a little bit on there. Probably won't be enough, but that's okay. I'll start wrapping forward. Okay, I'm getting close. Let me get a little bit more on there. Okay. And I'm just going to put just a tad amount more. Not much, but just a little bit. Okay. I'm going to stop at that point. Next, I'm going to bring this carapace from my casing over. And I'm going to lock that in place. And when I do so, I'm going to, and I'll show you this from the top, I'm going to kind of lean it a little bit my way. The reason I'm doing that is because I'm going to be bringing this wire over as a ribbing. And as I bring that wire over, it's going to naturally want to bring this casing back towards the center. So when I tie it in, I'm just going to lean just a little bit my way. So I'm just holding it, I'm just cheating a hair my way. Not much, but just a little bit. Okay, I have that locked in. Trim those butt ends. Then I'm going to rib the body. And you will be able to see this ribbing. And if you make a mistake and it's not lined up perfectly, you or your buddy will notice that. Is it the biggest deal? Absolutely not. You are adding a ton of weight to this pattern if you're going to be using this medium-sized chartreuse. Is that a good thing? That is up to you. To me it is. I want this pattern on the bottom. I want to fish this in fast water. And I'm not afraid of having a lot of weight near the head of the fly. Okay. I'll show you that carapace on the top, lined up, pretty much throughout the center. Okay, the next part of this pattern will involve just a little wing case that shoots out. I like to use a chartreuse DNA frosty fiber for that. In most of my fly tying videos, I pretty much will always say less is more, but it seems like on this fly, more is more, and that's just the way it is. Don't be afraid to, grab a nice clump of this stuff and trim it off. So I'm going to grab a clump of about this size, trim, okay, tied in. Okay, let me trim the butt section of those fibers. Okay, I might go back and trim. And I made that cut, and then after I make that cut, depending on how far back it is, and I just didn't like how far I went, so I'm just going to touch it up a little bit. I think I cut a little too much off that first time. Okay, I'm good. I'm going to place a little bit more dubbing on to just build up my thorax a bit. So I'm going back to this ice dub peacock. There's a couple turns. I might try to get maybe one more turn in there. Now, if you're changing the pattern, if you're using a different color for this, don't be afraid if the body, that the abdomen could be orange and you want to do a purple head, or you can make the whole body purple and a black head. Please don't be afraid of that. I'm just going to examine the fly the whole way around, make sure it's 360 degrees around with that. And then I'm going to grab the last part that will really kind of, help to represent the original Prince Nymph. That's some white goose buyouts. I'm going to trim 2 of them. Okay, I have my 2 buyouts. I'm going to tie them in off the top. These are going to be representing the legs of this nymph, or it could be the antenna, depending on which pattern you're going after, which natural. So I have one tied in. After you have one, and it's going to be a little easy to line up your second one, just base it on the length of the first. Just going to place 2 wraps, make sure they're both approximately the same length. Once they are, then I finish locking them in. Trim the butt sections of your white goose buyouts. Now you'll notice, at least I notice this, whenever I trim those, you can see those 2 little flaps are sticking up. And I don't like that. I want to make sure that you don't see that whenever you finish off the fly. So what I do is I'm going to kind of stroke everything back with my left hand. Then I'm going to take my thread and wrap it under a few times just to get those sticking up a little bit. And then I might try to trap those against the bead. And there, I've done it. Okay, now we can finish off the head of the fly. I may just wrap back to where I tied off the buyouts. Then to finish off the head, I'm going back again to this. This is going to be the ice dub, peacock colored. Again, let's get a little more dubbing on there. Build this head up just a little bit. I'm going to make sure I don't see that black thread. What's nice about this peacock dubbing is that it really just takes off in terms of the color, plus there's just all these extra strands going all over the place, and I really like that on this pattern. Okay. In fact, they're going crazy today. Get a couple wraps in there, put in a half hitch, and then finally my whip finish. If you want to use head cement, you are more than welcome to on this fly. I might need to because I think I just messed that up. Okay, and I saved it. Okay, I have everything locked in place. I'm going to trim my thread, and then the reason I trim is because I have all this extra stuff going on up here. So I just like to go around, trim that stuff out of the way. Kind of get this fly cleaned up just a little bit. Make sure you don't trim your buyouts when doing this. I may or may not be saying that from experience. Okay, and there is my finished Psycho Prince Nymph. I'll give you the little 360 tour of this pattern. Just a really great, versatile pattern. We have, excuse me, we have the black goose buyout for the tail. We use the ice dub peacock colored body. We have this carapace or the casing of pheasant tail. We have this really heavy ultra wire for the ribbing. We have some of this DNA frosty fiber jumping out for the wing case, a little bit more ice dub peacock in there, and before we finished off the head with that peacock, some white goose buyouts. So again, this is the original pattern. You can see how my version definitely is close to it, but there are a few variations. Here's another look at one that's very similar to the one I just tied, except body's the same, tail's the same. We got the white goose buyouts, DNA, except we have a hot spot at the front. A nice chartreuse colored tungsten bead. So just another small variation. Basically, I really believe this pattern has some great versatility, but there are so many different variations of it, and I really encourage you to get out there, start tying some of them, and experiment and see exactly what works on your home waters. Well, to finish off this fly tying video, again, thanks for viewing this. The hook, once more, was the Allen Fly Fishing hook. It was the S402BL. You can find those at allenflyfishing.com. Thanks for viewing this fly tying tutorial. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them directly on this YouTube page, or you can email me at tcammisa@gmail.com. Once again, thank you everybody for viewing this tutorial, and I hope you gained a little bit of new information here. Thanks.